the We Wreck Records podcast. Welcome to We Wreck Records, a new podcast by New Noise magazine dedicated to wrecking the mystery around your new favorite album. I'm your host, Christina Rowett, and this week's subject is Quicksand's seminal 1993 classic, Slip. Criminally unknown, utterly influential.
You know, say the Deftones were big fans or like Rage were fans, you know what I mean? Like they picked up on what we were doing, and part of our DNA is sort of like in that stream.
It defined the post-hardcore sound.
Like post-hardcore, like as most as you could be post-hardcore.
Their influences and the utter transformation of pop music had a huge impact.
When I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit, it's like I almost felt like it was my song. Like it's exactly what I wanted to do, but he did it.
In some ways transcending the New York hardcore that they were known for. Musically, it's got like this swing and a swagger to it. Like I think a lot of hardcore is like, no, 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 no. And this kind of like pulls in and like it pushes back, it teases a bit. It's a bit more of a seductive sound that maybe can magnetize people in a bit more. Quicksand frontman Walter Schreifels made his name with New York hardcore legends Gorilla Biscuits. His new band Quicksand made their major label debut with this week's record, 1993's Slip. Check out the show to learn why this particular record is still being talked about 30 years later and why it blazed a trail for what came after. Hi, welcome to We Wreck Records, our new podcast by New Noise magazine, all about wrecking the mystery around albums that move the needle in music, whether right now or throughout history. Today, we have a very special subject on the table to get elbows deep into. It is Quicksand's Slip, 1993. We have frontman Walter Schreifels to talk about the album. Welcome.
Hi.
It's one of the greatest 90s albums a lot of people have never heard of. It's kind of criminally unknown, but like wildly influential. It's one of those things that kind of people in the know about. Some say an album is like a yearbook photo. It kind of captures you, who you were and what you were doing in that time. Who were you and what were you doing in that time?
I think that it was special because of like where we were kind of as a group coming from, and the kind of like we were just in like hardcore bands like a couple of years before and like at a really good time. So we were kind of trying to experiment and make a new kind of music, you know, based on some influences of bands that we thought were cool at the time, which you know, there was tons of cool bands, but like not that many that were like really popular and good, but you know, kind of taking that all in and then all of a sudden like this sort of sea change happened with you know, with Nirvana and all this kind of music that was like, you know, like Sonic Youth had a gold record, you know, like music that would have not even been considered at all was all of a sudden being brought out to the public. And I think like what we had, you know, coming from New York City, coming from like this hardcore background, and you know, that it was just like representing a certain kind of cultural sort of thing, or you know, a sort of stream of influences and energy.
And I think being imprinted by a culture like New York hardcore, I mean, it's one of those things that is kind of lives in mythology for music forever, like that kind of place and time. Like I think it has to, and it seems like from the outside, I wasn't there, I was not able to participate, but
Yeah.
it seems like the why mattered as much almost as the what, like the why behind like hardcore music and all that kind of stuff. How does the why translate to Slip and to doing an album like this?
I mean, I think when the why to me would be, you know, initially just wanting to play CBGBs and be a part of this thing that was going on. You know, the scene that we were in was, I think, like a lot of scenes, you know, but it, you know, it like had a certain core group of people that kind of like created it, and it kind of got to a next level, and people, it kind of eventually got popular and hit a sort of peak, and then people were just like, actually, I'm over this shit, and they started, you know, to go away, and you know, different people took over. which I think is just like the course of music scenes. But it was so fantastic to be a part of it when there was so many different kinds of bands, um, like doing this kind of music, which was 100% made by kids for kids, and it was like could be anything.
Yeah.
And there was kids all over New York City that were like doing it. And we had like CBGBs, which is like, was a historic, like we knew that CBGBs was a thing when we started going there. It had already established itself, but it was sort of like run down at that time. I mean, it was probably always run down, but especially it was past its glory days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It
so
wasn't the
we
Cramps and Blondie every weekend.
No, it wasn't anymore. They weren't playing there anymore. So it was like we had this like incredibly magic venue like that's known around the world as our little playground and mixing sort of laboratory. And so we were like um very blessed in that way. But I think that the why was like, yeah, initially I wanted to play CBGBs. I wanted to like play a role in this scene, and
Mm.
in that way, like I knew how to play guitar. So I got in the band. And I think when that kind of got transferred to where we were making Slip, we made an independent EP on Revelation Records. And I think, it's hard for people that are, not my age maybe to understand, although probably it exists in similar ways, but like, there was there was a big divide between doing something on a major label and doing something independently,
Yeah.
and there still is, but it was sort of like, if you were on a major label, you would be heard by the masses. And there was just like, it wasn't like you had the internet where you could just like even throw it out there. I
Yeah,
mean, whatever,
they were the gatekeepers. I mean, in
100%.
the world of streaming, it's still kind of completely messed up and they're still gatekeeping in horribly algorithmically
Yeah.
invisible ways, but now it's all dastardly and hidden. But it's like, well, it's interesting you say that because I was talking to Nate from Converge and he said, talking about Nirvana was before that happened, it never seemed like a possibility that you could be in an
Yeah.
underground DIY band and become huge. It just wasn't the goal. Like you wanted to make music and tour and stuff, but no one was like, I'm gonna end up, on the at the top of the charts coming from an
No.
underground scene where, like Buzz from Melbourne's took me to a Black Flag show and now I'm on, on TV.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like it's like I think there's a lot of fascination in my generation, generations below me about this time, about 1993 and what happened.
Yeah. I mean, when you're saying like the why, it was like surely not like to make a career in music, like at all. So it was like, I mean, if you look at all the hardcore records of that time, they kind of like put out a 7-inch and then a record. And then by the time, maybe some bands would make a second record, but there was no career. That would just be it. Like everyone would either like go to college, get a job, get into other shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was not a career thing. So all of a sudden, this sort of thing happened where, oh yeah, so I could like sign to a major label and we're going to take some heat from our like fellow
Sell
people.
out.
But with each band that like signs, it gets a little bit less scrutinized. You know what I mean? Because you have more people to point to. Oh, they did it. They did
Yeah,
it. They
yeah.
did it.
Like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, and it's like
Yeah.
they're not shit bands that got signed. This show is proudly presented by DistroKid, and we have a special deal for all the musicians out there looking to release their new music fast. DistroKid helps over 2 million musicians around the world release on all major music streaming platforms and YouTube. You keep 100% of your earnings, consult a huge range of features, and if you like this show, support this show by taking advantage of this incredible offer. 30% off your first year with DistroKid. Just head to distrokid.com/VIP/we wreck records.
Especially for like, I don't know, for me personally and like us as a band, like we were super into that idea, and that because we had really really done that, you know what I mean? So it was we struggled with it, but then ultimately, like, my rent's being paid, I'm like in a tour bus, like all this cool shit's happening, and we were like on TV and getting played on the radio and all that kind of stuff. So that was really cool, but definitely struggled with that, when you're talking about what's the why. And like, I think we were very, very focused on like that the music be 100%, and all the stuff that our role in the whole thing was
Yeah.
like really, authentic, for lack of a better word, that we were still trying to do our thing, and for the audience that we kind of had built and would imagine that we would like to, for the people that we wanted to relate to, really.
Yeah,
Not so we weren't.
your people.
It was very exciting, and also I was very young, and so that was cool too.
Yeah, man. Well, it's like I like one of the things I like about it is I feel like lyrically it puts your insides on the outside. And I
Mm.
like music that puts your insides on the outside. And
Mm.
musically, it's got like this swing and a swagger to it. Like I think a lot of hardcore is like no 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 no, and this kind of like
Yeah.
pulls in and like it pushes back, it teases a bit. It's a bit more of a seductive sound that
Mm.
maybe can magnetize people in a bit more. I don't know. It's more. I don't want to say accessible is a terrible word, but like
Yeah.
it's more seductive, I think, in
Mm-mm.
terms of that kind of thing. And you said what did you say? You wanted to create sounds where you don't have to be good at guitar to create an emotional feeling. How do you make guitar and voice emotional instruments? Like how do you transmit? And do you have to feel the way you want the song to feel, or is it different?
Well, I think I definitely learned that through like hardcore and CBGBs and all that kind of stuff, because like the music is so uh charged, you know what I mean? A lot, and it's charged like with like a lot of the time it's like, righteousness, disgust, anger. That's a lot of it.
Yeah.
But there's like hope, and there's a whole range of emotions, but it's usually like really strong ones.
Yeah,
So
dude.
we just still naturally had that in us,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was also, we also had gotten like, more into subtlety of stuff, you know what I mean? And like the lyrics, like I felt, I had written the lyrics for Gorilla Biscuits, and that those lyrics were very much about like us and what are we going to do, and we're against this, and this is what we're for, the world that we want to see, and like let's do this together. Whereas like on Quicksand stuff, like I was writing more about what I kind of am going through, what I want to see, how I see, the bullshit in other people in the world, or the bullshit in me, you know what I mean? And like a lot of the lyrics are about that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And so I also was just, I had to write lyrics for this record. So I was like freaking stressing out. So I just started to really just dig in to try to get something,
Mm.
that felt, I guess, somehow, yeah, important in a way. So I guess the deeper I dug, you know what I mean, like that gives it, charges it emotionally, for
Yeah,
sure.
well, I've got like you've got a lot of emotions, exasperation, intensity, howling at the moon.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
What was
screaming my freaking head off the
Yeah,
whole
you did
time
a
too.
lot of howling at the moon. You did a lot of, what what did it feel like to talk more about your inner world and the world around you? Was it hard? Is it weird to like get on stage and talk, like did it feel differently than as you say, like going, we're all in this together, rah rah rah.
Yeah,
Kind of different.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was time to do. It just felt like the natural progression for me, and it wasn't so much like, at the time I wasn't really struggling with the idea of like it being too autobiographical
Yeah.
graphical. It was more like, I think that these are feelings that people like me are feeling at this time in my life, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like where like I've left the crew, and I'm like, who am I at this point, you know what I mean? Like where you're young, you're in your 20s, and you're kind of like, you still have your friends and stuff, but you're more defined by who you're trying to figure out who you are in a different way. Like you used to find out who you are through your friends, but now, you've got your own apartment maybe, or whatever. I don't know, whatever path you are, but at a certain point, like you just have to kind of let go of that a little bit. So I think like I was like speaking to that,
Yeah.
and I was taking shots at, you know, similarly to the hardcore stuff, the stuff that I felt was, bullshit or whatever. But I was more open to also like recognizing that that was like the reason I could recognize it is because in many ways, like I'm aware of it because I've participated in it or whatever. So it was like
You're the
also reflecting about on my own experience, rather than coming from a place of like, I'm the person that fucking knows what things are, and like I'm telling you what they are. Let's go over here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to look at my lyrics. There's probably some of that in there too, but that's how I remember it.
No, it's true. It's true though, and I think like is life is kind of that over and over again, right? Like you've as a teenager, you like pull away from your family. If you find like musical identity or some sort of other collective identity, then you pull away from it. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it still resonates with people because transition is kind of eternal. This show is presented by Grillo's Pickles. Grillo's Pickles make the freshest, crunchiest, most delicious pickles. And even if you're not a pickle fan, you should try Grillo's today. Why not? Live a little. You can find them in the refrigerated section of your local grocery store. So chill out and eat a pickle. Did you do Dine Alone? Were you eating alone when you wrote Dine Alone?
Yeah, 100%. Like I was saying
You really
before, like I was fucking stressing out because all of a sudden,
love that song.
the record had so much like we had recorded our first record for like a couple $1,000s, and now we're spending like shit tons of money to
In a
do this
real
with all,
place.
yeah, in a real place, and it's going to be on the radio and all this kind of crap. I'm like, I have no fucking idea what to write this song about, and it's got to be really good. And I was in a restaurant by myself and just like eavesdropping, and so yeah. But I thought it was cool because it's sort of funny, but also just like whatever. It's like real too, but it's funny. I think it's
The music's really interesting and like studios are kind of sacred spaces, like real like my first job when I was 21 was working at a really famous recording studio in Sydney and
Mhm.
it was a hallowed place. It was cool. Like you had to make everyone feel special because they were spending heaps of money and like it was the moment where it was all going to happen. And I don't know, there's
Yeah.
something quite magical about these places that are dedicated, that are cathedrals to things happening.
Yes.
What was it like walking in and like having all this time and space and money in a way that, DIY bands would not have had?
I mean, it was a combination of things. Of one, just like, wow, this is really cool. Like all this money's being spent on our band, like, but the other
Yay.
side is like, but on the other side, it's like I thought it was really stupid, because it's like
Yeah,
just give
dude.
us the money and we'll record the $5,000 record and it'll be the
100%.
same.
Yeah, and we'll have a
But
great
like
time. Yeah, we'll
and we'll have a great time and we could
go
do
on
some real
holidays.
fun shit.
Did you have cool tools to play with? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. We
yeah.
recorded the record in at a place called Longview Farms, which is in Massachusetts, Western Mass, which is a really beautiful part of the country. And there was like horses there, and they made all our food there, and it was this really cool barn that we were recording in, and it was all like Neve console, like every sort of outboard, and like the Rolling Stones rehearsed there and all that
All
stuff,
that
you know what I
crap.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
the Bad Brains had recorded there too, so I was
that's
excited
fun.
about recording that they had recorded there. But like I was into it because that's what was going to happen anyway. But I was always thinking, God damn it, I wish they would just give us the money because we don't need all this.
How would you describe the lyrical story as a thing threaded together?
I mean, it's the most I think of is just like kind of dealing with your own some sort of self-analysis, or like some sort of like taking stock. Fazer, I guess I'm thinking aloud, but like Fazer is like making saying like, hey, you're always changing, you're always going this way, that way, whatever. And it's sort of like a critique, but at the same time, like obviously, like it's from a place of being like that yourself, like, and also accepting that that's how life is. Or then the second song is like head to wall, so you're just sort of like dealing with blocks, dealing with like I think it's just very much a young
Yeah.
sort of coming of age kind of thing, but like not coming of age teenager, coming of age like not quite adult, but like doing adult things. You know what I mean?
Slight quarter life crisis. It's
Which is a lot of like the Paul Weller stuff is
yeah,
like that too.
yeah.
Like a lot of the Jam stuff is like that, like really upset about these certain things and stuff. And I think I was like into that energy as well. Or like Fugazi's like that too. I think they're a bit. I think I'm more like maybe psychological and direct, but like that vibe.
Let's get into like the nuts and bolts of it and stuff. How did it, so you wrote the songs first, you wrote the like how did they all come together?
Yeah, we would generally write the music, and I would kind of like, sort of sing along with just like, maybe get a couple words in here or there, or just like fake words. And then I would really stress out super hard, like the night before I had to like sing and write out the lyrics. And that was my process.
What would we not know about Fazer? Because I think it's a very triumphant song. And I always think
Mm,
it's super significant what you pick as song one, especially like in
hmm
Nero. Like this is an album that you can listen to end to end quite it's quite satisfying in that way.
mm.
Was there
Oh, thanks.
like would did you intend it to sort of set the scene? And yeah, can you tell us a bit about the story of the making of that song in particular?
We kind of took a left turn. Our first EP was like real, sort of aggressive, like super into like Jane's Addiction and Slayer and Soundgarden, and just like really aggressive kind of blast, and sort of like a one set of influences.
Yeah.
And then there was a time between that EP and the album that was maybe like a year and a half, and like in that year and a half we discovered shoegaze, which had just kind of started happening in England. So then all of a sudden we were like, I don't want to do this like heavy metal type of stuff. I want to do shoegaze type of stuff. But then, we're being signed and appreciate, kind of like getting popular based on this sort of other thing. So Fazer was a song that was like really trippy and super shoegazy. And we in trying to get the album and trying to get focused on it, we kind of like reined in some of that to give it a little bit more of a heavy form, because we just like ultimately figured, let's kind of have that around the edges and not necessarily be the nuts and bolts of it until
Yeah.
we'll go down the road. So Fazer, I just remember we're having this version that was just like all these like weird whammy guitars and stuff, and then it just got kind of overwrought. So once we got the music down, and the lyrics are literally about that trip, you know what I mean? Like Fazer, like changing from phase to phase, and like how um like people just you get a different haircut, you change your dressing style or something like that. You got a new hat. Do I look cool in this hat? Do I look foolish? Oh, I'm thinking about growing
Try
a
a new
mustache.
thing. Try
You
a new.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, like that kind of thing. So the lyrics are about that, but I mean, there's like a sort of yeah, I guess just in the delivery that it's like there's like this more like life or death kind of consequence to it. But again, I think I would like Dine Alone, like I guess my thing, wasn't super conscious, but having a subtle layer of humor to something and then delivering it in a way where it's like, yeah, life or death, like
Yeah.
absolutely
That's very
serious.
hardcore, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of like that, because it's like the melodrama is important for the like both things can be real, you know what I mean?
100%. Well, when where like life is tragic and hilarious.
Yes.
Like it's just endlessly. Well, we kind of skipped over my yearbook photo. Who were you and what were you doing? Who were you in this moment? How old were you at this point with this album when you were making this album and stuff? And who were you?
I guess around that time I would have been in my I've been early 20s, like 21, 22, 23, somewhere in that like early 20
Little
life.
baby. Little baby.
I was a little baby, but I also had done so much cool shit already. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
had toured uh the United States, I've toured in Europe. I had already made probably like 3 or 4 albums by the time
Yeah, yeah, of
I
course.
did it. So I had had a lot of experiences, and I had gone to I was going to college, and then when the band kind of like picked up and got more serious, then I guess with the record contract, I dropped out of college, and yeah, I had like I think I moved in with my girlfriend at that time too, and so I was like shacking up. I was like
Doing grown
doing
up
all this.
shit. I got a record
Yeah,
deal. I got a
I
girlfriend. I got, yeah.
I grew my hair long, you know what I mean? I was just doing all this cool shit. So it was a really fun time. And also like combined with the fact that music was so interesting at that time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like before like Nirvana like happened, like there was also like this kind of bubbling critical mass, you know what I mean, underneath it, to where like all the good bands were on indies, and all the bands that were like on MTV that were popular were like, you know, I mean, we could be nostalgic and be psyched about Faster Pussycat or whatever, or you know, about you know, Cinderella, and appreciate them, you know, for what they were. But like for me at the time, if that represented hard rock, it just, I didn't, I was not
It'd be
into it.
sad. It'd be a sad one.
Yeah. So it was cool that all that was happening at the same time. So I was like really interested in music, my own music and other people's music, and the culture was just really cool.
What do you think like grunge and alternative music and hardcore share, and where do they diverge as musical movements?
I think like the hardcore thing, the one that I was a part of, was like all the guys that really blew it up in the grunge world were like seniors when I was a freshman. So it's like, you know, like all those guys were like 3 or 4 years older than me, you know, like Dinosaur
Right.
Jr.,
Yeah, yeah,
Nirvana, like, so their version of hardcore is a little bit different than my version of hardcore.
yeah,
And so
yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
but I think ultimately there's all the hardcore kids and punk kids, you know, before they became hardcore or punk, were probably into Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, and all that kind of stuff. And then they found punk and then changed that. So then when they kind of like eventually got over the like, okay, I did the punk thing, it's not surprising that they would start ripping Black Sabbath. You know what I mean? Which is, when I first heard Nirvana, I thought it's sort of like reads Black Sabbath, but underneath it's like Replacements and REM. Like there's like,
What did I read something funny one time that said Nirvana make like rock songs with pop that dress up as pop, and Metallica make pop songs dressed up as something heavy. Look, I think melody is a very interesting thing that they like. I think he's one of the greatest melody writers of all time.
oh yeah,
And I think
yeah.
and I think melody is one of the strongest parts of Slip. Like,
Thank
what's your
you.
relationship with melody? Like,
Well, it was hard because like in hardcore there really isn't much melody, but
yeah,
like
that's my
I
question.
would, so I would kind of stick it in there in a sort of like, in like little small doses, you know. And I think you know, like the main thing that I worked that did before before Quicksand was Gorilla Biscuit. So that's like, as New York hardcore bands go, like that's probably one of the most melodic.
This
But
is
even so, it's not like, yeah, it's not like melodic like the Descendants are melodic, or like Nirvana is melodic. Um yeah, so I think a void of melody, but at the same time trying to you know, you want to hook people. I love like pop music. I love like new wave. I love yeah, songs with melody. So I think that comes, had to be in it,
yeah.
but I wanted it to read um sort of heavy and aggressive, you know what I mean? And so if it was like the music I felt was like melodic, or sort of like emotionally like more complex than just pissed off, like that could be complemented by more aggression. Likewise, like the other way around, if it's like, you know. And I think that's something like, say, Nirvana writ large did very well, but I think a lot of people were like, that was what was interesting. I mean, you listen to Dinosaur Jr., it's just like sort of like noisy, shitty sounding, but you know, with this sort of like mumbling sort of sweet melody underneath it. You know, that contrast just makes something. And I guess with Quicksand, I was just trying to do my own sort of contrast.
This month's episodes of We Rep Records are brought to you by Earpiece, the high fidelity earplug brand designed to enhance your experience of live music. Their lightweight, triple patented design basically conforms to the natural shape of your ear canal, which is awesome. And it's the closest thing to custom molded without the price tag or the chronic fear that you're going to lose them. Your future self who wants to listen to live music when you're old will thank you. For 15% off your next pair of earplugs, head to earpiece.com/pages/WWR podcast. We'll put the link in the description. Definitely suss it out. What's like a bit on this album that was kind of an accident that you're very happy about? Or that turned out completely? That's a very broad question, but yeah.
Okay, that's I thought of something though right away. The song Baphomet, which is an instrumental, like I had some lyrics that I would sing to it live, but they were just taken from like a go-go song or a knack song or something that I happened to know the lyrics to, and I would just like sing them as placeholders. And then when it came time to do the album, it's like I couldn't do that, and and I couldn't think of anything to replace those lyrics either. So I just kind of left it blank, and I said, "Hey, can we have an instrumental?" And and so that's why we have an instrumental on the record. And I just think it's cool to have an instrumental on your record. You know, I'm happy that it turned out that way. Although it was kind of out of laziness.
Hey man, it's meant to be. It's
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
instrumental guitar music is like polyphia. Like there's a lot going on there. Like
Yeah, I mean, in fact, like I've often entertained the idea of just doing a musical, like an instrumental record. You know what I
I
mean? Because
kind
it's
of
really
like that
cool.
idea. Like good
Yeah,
voice and shit. Not to diminish your voice. It'd just be kind of cool.
yeah. No, I mean, it's just like different because like when you're listening to someone's voice, and it depends, like for everybody, but sometimes I just don't really want to get wrapped up in someone else's shit. Like I don't care about their story. You know what I mean?
I
I
want to
don't care about
project
their
myself.
heartbreak.
I want to
You know what I
project
mean?
my shit onto it. Yeah.
Yes, I
My
mean,
own shit onto it. We all got our
yeah, like if it's without vocals, then I can just like, yeah, I can imprint my own story onto it, and or your relationship to it's just different. I mean,
yeah.
it could be really boring, but my favorite Fugazi album is Instrument, like which there's very few vocals on that. And I love it. I think instrumental music is pretty popular now.
It is. It's a whole thing. I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes it's showing off. It's like my guitar is so sick right now. I'm not gonna have some.
Uh yeah.
It's speaking of guitars, you got two guitars. What did each what was each of your roles, did you think musically as guitar players, and how does it
Yeah.
that was
I was
that
writing
took a
I
bit
was
to get out.
I
Yeah.
was writing. I mean, Tom was had more chops. Like he was like could play
Yeah.
faster. He was really good at leads, and he had a really cool voice.
Hmm.
And I was writing more of the riffs, so I would play most of the rhythm tracks, and Tom would do the solos, and that's mostly how it broke down. I mean, which was nice, and I would hang with Tom and we work on the solos together, but it would usually be out of a collage sort of like things that he would just do naturally. And then we kind of string it together
Yeah.
to have to tell a bit of a story. And with the rhythms, I was writing most of the riffs, so I was kind of just primarily doing that.
What do you think, which song do you think has the strongest sense of emotion from a guitar side of things?
Um, let's see. I think Transparent's really cool. I like that the harmonic, which if you're not a guitar player, it's like you don't really play the strings um, with your finger pressed down on the fretboard. You kind of like sort of half play it, and it makes this harmonic sound, which is like it's sort of an gosh, man, I've never had to explain harmonics, but it's sort of like another tone completely.
Yeah.
It's like sort of tapping into another dimension. Okay. And people have been doing it for years, but that's the one that we kind of played with that. And I think it's just got like a real sort of like the outro, and there's these like two little sort of B part bridge kind of things in it that has this real desperate feeling to it, but it's also like triumphant sort
Yeah.
of. But that's my take on it, you know what I
I
mean?
wrote down Exasperation on that song. It's
Yeah,
Exasperation.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. How many times have you been pacified? Well, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
What's it about? Who's
Oh
you?
yeah.
Who's the you when you're talking about? Like, does it change a
I
lot
mean,
in
that
your,
would be a critique. That would be a self-critique, I think.
yeah?
Like when someone tells you, let me think. I'd have to listen to all the lyrics, but what it makes me feel like is like, oh, okay. So like going back in time, it would be like being in the record meeting or something, or being in a band meeting or something. Oh, we're gonna do this. And I think like that's totally a mistake. That's stupid. I don't want to do that. I think that's cheesy. Let's not do that. And they no, 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 no. Don't worry, it's gonna be fine. Like this,
Great.
the way this is like no one will be, it'll be great. And we did this with so and so, and blah 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 blah. That might be one way that I've been pacified. That might have been weighing on my in my mind, because it was
Yeah.
like I don't know. I guess there was I was probably dealing with a lot of pressure in a way, like
Yeah, dude.
self-imposed and outward. Um, but I think that's just a thing that anyone feels. You know what I mean? It's like, how many times you've been pacified? I guess in a way it would be like wagging a finger at somebody, trying to tell them to shape up. You know what I mean?
Straighten up and fly
But
ride.
yeah, like, don't listen to them, do your thing. You know what I mean? Like, or, well, sometimes people talk you down from some crazy shit. So I don't think it's like black or white. You know what I mean?
What was the silliest idea that you in a band meeting or a record company meeting that you were just like, no.
Oh, nothing particularly.
Like
Oh my
absurd.
God. God damn it. This is a good one. The video for, I shouldn't be pointing people to this, but, I don't know, maybe it's not as terrible as I remember it, but we did a video for Freezing Process.
Yep.
And Freezing Process is a really cool song. And so the video was done by Kevin Kerslake, who had done the Nirvana video for Come As You Are.
Oh, nice.
Great guy.
Yeah.
But he was working a lot at that time and getting a lot of money. And so it was like the record label psyched, oh, get the guy who did the Nirvana video.
Of course I did.
So that means it gets on MTV and then you become Nirvana. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, obviously.
You know what I mean? So that's how it works. You listen, this is how it is. And
One
just
plus
think,
one.
yes, simple math.
Yeah.
And the video is just really silly and cost a shit ton of money. And I tried to throw a wrench in it at the last minute, and they were just like, dude, no, we're doing it. And
Accept it.
it was so much money. It was like, and the video is like called Freezing Process. And in the video, we become frozen. And by frozen, I mean, it's like we have like white makeup on us and stuff.
That is
I
pretty
mean, I'm making it sound
that
really
is pretty
dumb.
funny though. It's good. No, but it should be
Um,
absurd. It should be absurd.
yeah, but I mean, I think a
No?
lot of videos at that time were dumb. You know what I mean? There's dumber ones, but the thing is, this was expensive and dumb.
Yeah. Well, I just think I don't know, I like hearing about it because it's like I like knowing that there was a time when people threw heaps of money at underground music.
Oh, it was amazing. It
I
was
just
amazing.
people are like, oh, I don't know. Sometimes I just think about it. It's like it's so bullshit how hard everyone works and how much everyone starves. Like
Yeah.
it just pisses me off. It's like,
Well, yeah.
like the whole business, like just this is bullshit, man. It really is.
Yeah.
It should be like this.
It just is,
Has it gotten
and I don't
better
mean
or
to
worse? What do you think?
I wouldn't want to disparage. Like, I'm not, just getting mad at the director or at anybody about
No,
that video. It's just
no,
like
it's
was my
fine.
feelings about it. And maybe I would like the video more if I saw it now, but it was definitely too expensive. That I stand by. But I think the idea of you know, at that time, like us getting to do this album and to make this expensive video and all this kind of stuff represented the failure of like 50,000 bands. You know what I mean? And I think the difference now, and that's a lot of luck. It's, you know what I mean? So the difference between then and now is like now you're out there with the 50,000 bands. Like everybody's in the lane. You know what I mean?
Clouded. It's clouded and
So
clouded.
that's good and that's awesome, like freedom and democracy. But it's like it's also the money is way thinner,
Yeah, where's
and
universal basic income? You know,
yeah,
call me socialist.
let's
Like,
go.
let's
I'm
do this.
I'm I'm
Sorry,
ready for all
this
that
is a
stuff.
topic I'm very interested in, and we're not going to go down this whole path.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
What do you think is unique about the contribution of each band member? So, like Alan on drums, Sergio on bass. You guys, what do you think you guys did on this album that only they could have done?
I think they're all like, we weren't, it was rare that we were all on the same page. You know what I mean? We were all bringing in such our own influences.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pushing and pulling and that kind of stuff. And so I think when we finally agreed on something that we could all play together, that imbued it with a certain kind of power of wow, everybody's into what they're playing. Holy shit. How did that happen? And I think with Alan, he's got such a unique voice on drums. If you listen to his playing and never more than today, he has a very lyrical way of playing, and the way that he hits a drum, like it's just like I'll try to do like a sound check for him and I'll hit the snare drum. And I remember getting so pissed off at our sound man. It's like, why can't I soundtrack the drums? Because dude, you just don't sound like it. It's like I just have a stick and I'm hitting it. What's the difference? It's not like that. So he's a very unique voice as a drummer.
I've never heard anyone say that. That's really cool. A unique voice as a drummer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a cool thing. There's a lot of drummers that are freaking awesome, but they can more blend into the background in a
Yeah.
way. So that, so that's a really particular skill as well, which is really, really cool. That's why you get someone like Josh Freese can play for all these different bands and make them all sound great because he just is able to adapt in
Mm.
a certain way, or as an example. But anyway, Alan plays very uniquely. Sergio as well, the bass player, he just has a certain sense of melody and uh he's never playing bass traditionally. Like if you listen to the whole record, he's way more like a guitar player.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of the grooves are just really between the connection between him and Alan. I mean, which is where they would be, but they have a real together and separately. They have such unique voices. And Tom as well, the guitar player, like he didn't play so much rhythms, but the way that he played his solos and he had overdubs and things like that he was more into effects than I was. And he just had a certain rhythm and cadence to his playing that like it just wasn't, like you listen to like a lot of metal bands or even indie bands or something like that. There's a sort of style that like is acceptable and people can do it well, and other people just sound a little janky doing it. And then there's people that could try to do that style and just will never sound right. You know what I mean? And that's like sucks for fitting in, but if you can like harness it in a way that like showcases it properly, then you can really do something awesome. And I think like Tom as a player like that,
Mm.
especially with his solo playing. So I
It's a
think you had a
cool
lot
palette.
of, yeah. And I
Cool
think
palette of
everybody,
paints. Yeah.
yeah. So it wasn't like a kind of Ramones kind of thing where like everything is hitting at once, you know what I mean? In a sort of like united way. It was like there's a lot of sort of like
Fighting.
there's fighting and I think that comes out, but it comes out in that it's more of like the static, the rub, of it.
Yeah.
And I think everyone finds their place, and people would get out of the way too, so I think everyone was a fan of everybody as much
Yeah.
as we disagreed. We were also fans.
This show is also proudly presented by Audio Media Grading. AMG authenticate, grade, and preserve your precious music collectibles. Each item comes in a museum grade, UV protected acrylic case with a serial numbered hologram, which is pretty dope. So if you have a precious music collectible, head to audiomediagrading.com, use the code New Noise and get 10% off your first order. We also have a special offer thanks to AMG and Iodine Records, a limited edition, sold out family and friends pressing of Quicksand Slip. So head to their website for your chance to win. I feel like the guitar on like can opener is interesting. It's like its sound is kind of turned sideways. How did you make that?
Yeah, I think Tom did this sort of like bell sort of sound, that
Cool, man. Yeah.
really, yeah, it's really cool. It really kind of sets the song off from the very top of it.
Mm.
This song "Can Opener" was supposed to be the opening track, and that's why it was called "Can Opener." But ultimately, we felt Fazer was a better opener. But yeah, that song was actually demoed. I mean, this is for the heads, but like this song and "Dine Alone" were like our first new songs after the uh the EP. So those were kind of like, our
Bridging.
new direction, sort of.
What do you think makes an album or a band really stick out of the world they've came from, even if they share things with other bands like all bands do?
I think I mean, there's just bands that really find the thing, like,
Yeah.
some little cool period of time before everyone else. Some people hit it like way too far ahead, and then it's harder to like keep track of them.
Yeah.
Um, or they might not even get credited with it. And some just like kind of grab it in perfect timing. And I think like for us, it was like we were like post-hardcore, like as most as you could be post-hardcore, like we were post-hardcore. Like Fugazi are another post-hardcore band.
Yeah.
Embrace is a post-hardcore band. So it's like coming from that, Laughing Hyenas are post-hardcore band. A lot of these bands, we were so that.
What do you
And
how do
we
you define it? No, carry on. You finish your thought.
I mean, it's kind of as it says, it's like you were really into hardcore and now you're making some other kind of music, but you've got this hardcore baggage with you. So in that baggage is like a whole bunch of really cool tricks, but at the same time, you want to expand beyond the sort of beautiful simplicity of hardcore. You want to do something, maybe it's artistically more ambitious or emotionally sort of more complex, but you still have those hardcore tricks. So how do you use them, or how do you run away from them? And
Yeah.
I think like we were the representative of that music, of that sort of transition on a major label. Like there weren't too many other people to point to at that time. Another one would be like Rage Against the Machine in a way, because they came from hardcore, at least Zach did, or, Helmet kind of came from a hardcore sort of thing. So it's like there wasn't that many bands that were doing it,
Yeah.
and we each had our own sort of unique take on it. So I think that really helped, just like the context and the trajectory, in terms of making it like an album that people could be like, this is fucking different. You know what I mean? And like, this is the thing that I want to hear. Or maybe,
Mm.
like the first time I heard Nirvana, when I first heard, and we're talking about Nirvana here a lot because they
Well,
were
it's
just,
of the time,
it's
like
of the time.
three, like they were a part of the time.
Yeah.
Unless that's lame, I don't know. I just feel
Yeah.
like it's interesting. You guys were had this.
Contemporaries.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
And I mean, although they, like I said, they were seniors and we were freshmen, but they had set the table for us to even be able to do this on a sort of popular level at all. And like when I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit," it's like I fucking it's like I almost felt like it was my song. Like it's exactly what I wanted to do, but he did it. You know what I mean? It's like
Damn that guy.
a scratch that you can't, like, it's in sort of the center of your back and you can't reach it, and then that song comes out and you're like, exactly, it's like this perfect combination of all these different things. And so there's other records like that I heard, like My Bloody Valentine, that was like, like that's what I wanted to, you know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
did it. Like I knew about this, that, and the other thing and the other thing, but combining them in this way. And just like when I hear music that does that, it's just so exciting. So like, I think we just came out at a good time and everything just sort of worked out. And like, we were into what we were doing and, put our best effort forward. So, there's bands that do that all the time. And my Spotify playlists are full of like bands that never had any success, but the songs like really speak to me. And
Yeah.
I don't know why they weren't popular.
Break free from boring with rootless coffee. You can get small batch roasts like a damn fine cup of coffee or no X and espresso. As you can see, the bags are designed by absolutely killer multimedia artists, which is dope. So, if you want a one-off order or a coffee subscription, head to rootlesscoffee.com and use the code NEWCOFFEE20 for 20% off your first order. Obviously it's had a big impact, and like we're still talking about it 30 something years later.
Yeah.
What were the records that you were kind of listening to when you were making it? Do you listen to music when you're like recording, or do you kind of make space around yourself for that, or like
Yeah. I was super hungry like for music. I mean, I was listening to probably yeah, would have been listening to Sonic Youth, whatever the contemporary album at that time would have been, which was probably is it Dirty? Would have probably been. I was listening to Dinosaur Jr. I was listening to My Bloody Valentine. I was listening
good
to
shit going on?
Pale Saints. I was listening to and I was really into Paul Weller at that time and the Jam because we were on the same label at that time. So I got the whole discography. I was listening to Ride's album Going Blank Again. Um,
There's a lot going on.
there was a lot. Oh, yeah, a lot going. But I mean, there were so many good albums coming out at that time. It was
Yeah.
insane. So I was listening to my contemporaries,
Yeah.
more probably more, and whatever new stuff was coming out. Like I was very up on. I probably wasn't listening to hardcore too much. Would be the
Yeah.
exception.
Well, you're in your post-hardcore era.
Yeah, I was in my post-hardcore
I
phase.
always,
So
always, I think it's quite lovely having you explain post-hardcore because I was always like, as a music journalist, I was like, post-hardcore, hardcore's still going. What are you talking about? But no, it's about your post-hardcore journey.
it's your
It's not
journey.
about, it's not about, this is
It's
like
not like
a profound
hardcore's
moment
over.
for me. Like, I've been getting it.
Yeah, oh,
Like, what
good.
do you mean post-hardcore? Oh, yeah, he used to do hardcore and now he doesn't do hardcore.
Well, it's also like post-punk, It's
Yeah,
like
it's not
where
over.
they're taking sort of, yeah, it's not punk's not over, but it's like post-punk is the period like right after like this big punk explosion where some of these punk people were figuring out a different way to do
Yeah.
music.
How would
And
you,
that's kind of what we were doing.
how would you, if this record was the score to a movie, who would be
Mhm.
in it and what would be the storyline?
My first thought was California because Unfulfilled was in the movie California with Brad
Hey,
Pitt and Juliette Lewis.
God,
Um,
this is very 1993 right now.
yeah.
Brad
It
Pitt and
was
Juliette
so,
Lewis in 1993, fucking California.
and
Yeah.
they were going out. They were
Yeah,
going
yeah.
out.
It's very poetic. It's very
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
So I guess something like I don't know. I guess I would have liked it to be something like more like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. You know what I mean? That's what I would want it to be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Would you say
Yeah,
it's about longing? I feel
yeah,
like,
for
yeah,
sure.
it's
And I think that the record is a lot about the hits on those themes a lot too.
yeah, 100%. How did you change like from I mean, you guys broke up a few years later.
Mhm.
How did you change between like going into this album and the band breaking up? What kind of shifted?
I guess it kind of felt like stage one of my musical ride was like was sort of over because I was thinking, the band was successful. I was really proud of what we had done, and we were still on the up when we broke up,
Mhm.
and but I felt like let's just kind of like seal that and kind of yeah that's a good time to exit. And for me, I was just like, I'm having a good time with this stuff, but I had played so much and like it just wasn't fun. We had like kind of burned ourselves out, and I didn't want to do it anymore like that. And so then I was like sort of like not really any fault of my own, but like um the record label that I was on got bought by some other record label, and so then I was just kind of like getting like they kept my contract, which was cool. But
Yeah.
then I finally really dealt with major label bullshit. You know what I mean? Because I basically wasn't able to put anything out for a couple years. So in that time, I was just like
Yeah.
sort of like hand to mouth with the record label, and I was just like, maybe I'll become a fireman. That seems like a good job. People like you know what I mean? You get good benefits, and I'll just make music when it kind of suits me. I
Yeah.
don't really know how much I really enjoy doing this as like a job. And so that sort of changed for me.
What has really stuck with you that people like response to it, like when it came out and obviously years later? What have been like fellow artists or people who have said stuff that kind of stuck with you?
Um, well, I guess it's just really cool that, especially from my peers and like from people that I really respect, like knowing that that record influenced
Mm.
uh really great artists that I totally admire,
Yeah, who are
and
your
like
favorites?
ones that I feel like were,
You're happy they are your children.
well, I wouldn't claim them as my children, but just like even like, say the Deftones were big fans, and
Yeah.
or like Rage were fans, you know what I mean? Like people that like because of the timing, like that they picked up on what we were doing and did, obviously were doing their own thing and doing an amazing
Yeah.
thing. But like those bands are so big that they influence so many other bands. So like part of our DNA is sort of like in that stream. But like anytime
Yeah.
anyone tells me like, the fact that we're talking about it, I'm having a nice time talking with you about it. Like that's awesome. You
But
know what I mean? Like,
and this is totally dope. I'm like, oh, it's cool to hear Wreck the Mystery. That's the point of the show.
oh, it is. Oh shit.
Drawing any kind of parallel between like Deftones, Rage Against the Machine, and Quicksand because I think it's all that personality and musicality and this weird melting pot in completely different ways that kind of had
Yeah,
it.
and we were also fans of the same things, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, yeah,
yeah,
and those guys have definitely influenced me as well. But we were all fans of like say the Bad Brains or Fugazi or something like that.
yep,
So to be in, when I was going to like make a band and stuff, like my goal was really just to play CBGBs and like kind of be in the scene,
yeah,
and then like to be in, to get have the respect of people that I really admire, or that not respect necessarily, but like that they were somehow touched or dug with the record in some sort of way. Like that's amazing. That's like a lot
yeah.
of validation. You know what I mean? I don't like walk around like with like, thinking I'm so cool, but I'm not above being like, hey, that's fucking great.
What would you put on this record's tombstone?
This record's tombstone. Well, as you just said, like I don't think it ever has a tombstone. Like it's always going to exist uh in the on a hard drive somewhere, buried deep in the in the
In the
kind of
vault.
post-apocalyptic landscape. Someone will
Indeed.
discover it.
I'll discover it in a time capsule. You should leave a note. What would
Yes, in the
okay,
Planet of the
actually, what
Apes.
would you put on the note?
On the note,
It's in the time
uh
capsule. There we go. I'm
okay,
just
let me think about
workshopping
that.
live here. I'm workshopping questions live.
Let me think about that.
Yeah,
I was gonna say skip to song X, but actually the first song is good.
it is good.
Uh, so
Yeah.
uh yeah, no skips.
No skips. 100% no skips. That's the best way to end it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Walter of
thank you.
Quicksand. We have discussed Slip. You should probably go and listen to it. You've just spent an hour hearing about it. Go and spend an hour
All right.
listening to it.